Hey YouTube, Hill Country Husker. Appreciate you guys checking out my videos. Thanks for all the subscribers. Appreciate the comments. Please keep them coming. I want to say thanks to David Acton and also Linda West for bringing to my attention, because I know the mainstream media is not giving this a whole lot of coverage. But what's going on? The back and forth between Israel and Iran is getting serious. I've pulled together some news stories and put them in a little typed narrative. I find it easier for me to be able to compress a story, get it right in my mind. Let me just run through some of these major points here. Commander of the Islamic Revolution Guards Corps, IRGC, Major General Mohammed Ali Jafari, told reporters on Saturday that he is confident war with Israel is coming and that the conflict will end with the obliteration of the Jewish state. Quote, "War will happen, but it's not clear when and where." While Iranian officials like Jafari maintain that the Islamic Republic's nuclear program is peaceful in nature, the general hinted that it does in fact have a nuclear arm program. Quote, "The Islamic Revolution is moving hastily towards achieving its objectives." Iranian media quoted the general as saying, "There is also no way Iran could physically obliterate Israel besides using nuclear weapons, considering the distance between the two nations." The Islamic Revolution is moving hastily towards achieving its objectives. What are those objectives? Has anybody been following that? I've been kind of following this loosely the last couple of years. Basically, the Islamic Republic of Iran wants to destroy Israel, wants to usher in the return of the 12th Imam, and Ahmadinejad has made this his mission. He feels that he is the person to do this. Now, ironically, he is in the last year of his presidency, and this is the only time that he has the opportunity to do this. If you're interested, look up the 12th Imam and check me on what I'm telling you. I think you'll be vastly amazed, and look up some of the things that Ahmadinejad has said regarding the 12th Imam. Continuing on, Defense Minister Ehud Barak insisted that Israel cannot and should not rely on America to stop Iran's defiant quest for nuclear weapons. Quote, "In theory, the Americans could have easily bridged the gap between international demands and Iran's behavior," said Barak. "They, the Americans, could have firmly threatened to destroy Iran's nuclear program if it was still operational by next spring. Unfortunately, as Barak explained, Obama cannot make such forward-looking commitment because he doesn't even know if he will still be president by that time. And if Mitt Romney is elected," this is a quote, "and if Mitt Romney is elected, history has shown that a president will not take such drastic action during his first year in office." I think that's probably true. Obama doesn't know what he's going to do. He's incompetent. Mitt Romney's not going to stir the pot at this point. He's not going to do it in his first year in office. He doesn't want to be the first president to have gone into nuclear conflict with another nation, World War II aside. Continuing, as such, the defense minister seemingly lamented, quote, "The expectations placed on American security guarantees are not serious." Barak went on to say that the Iran nuclear threat is bigger than the threat Israel faced before the Six-Day War, when Israel found itself forced to launch a preemptive strike. Israel's done this before whenever they felt threatened. Mentioned here back in the early 70s, the Six-Day War, they launched a preemptive strike against Egypt. They did not hesitate to do it, and it was probably the right thing to do at the time. If Israel feels threatened, they will launch a preemptive strike. You have to ask yourself, does Israel have the capability to completely annihilate Iran's nuclear capabilities? I don't know. I really don't know. Um, does Iran have the capability of retaliating sufficiently? I don't know that either. One of the Iran officials came out a week or so ago saying in the past years a lot of what they said about their achievements was false, and a lot of their setbacks were false as well. So you really don't know what the state of the Iranian nuclear capabilities are right now. They've been misleading the world since the beginning. So you don't know. You don't know what they have, and they're not going to come right out and tell you. Continuing on, Defense Minister Barak has twice in the past few weeks called a gathering of Israel's top generals and intelligence officers to convince them of the necessity to strike Iran now. Not to talk about it, not to think about it, to do it now. Talking about a nuclear conflict in the Mideast. Many of the generals were reluctant to support Barak's position, primarily because they did not believe Israel had the capability to set back Iran's nuclear program in any significant way. As I just mentioned that. One of the things that I have read that's being kicked around is that if they were to strike with a high altitude electromagnetic pulse, that they possibly could knock out Iran and send them back to the pre-industrial age. Not necessarily the Stone Age, but at least the pre-industrial age. Still, we're talking a nuclear strike. However, Barak disagreed, insisting that Israel could delay Iran's progress long enough for the current regime to fail, or for the international community to become more serious about its own efforts to halt Iran's nuclear program. Now, you want to throw in the international community here. On one side, you've got the USSR, Putin, and Russia telling the West, do not attack Iran. Then on the other side over here, you've got the United States, essentially. I was going to say the UN, but they're worthless. You've got the United States on the other side, showing support, not showing support. Where do I stand with Israel? I don't know. Should I stand? Should I not stand? So the international community is just as disjointed on this subject. On that, what kind of leads to the Jewish state's uncertainty of support. George W. Bush firmly declared when he was in office, as Obama has done with Iran, that America would never allow North Korea to build a nuclear bomb. Okay, Bush said that America would never allow North Korea to build a nuclear bomb. Right now, Pyongyang has a minimum of 6 and potentially as many as 18 plutonium bombs. And they could also have fuel for approximately 48 weapons by the year 2015. So much for that promise, right? Rogue nations like Iran have become convinced that American threats have no teeth, and therefore Israel cannot put any real stock in words of encouragement and security guarantees from Washington. Because too many times we've said we're not going to allow this, and yet we just turn a blind eye and it happens. Instead of standing up, doing the right thing, I don't care if it's Iran or if it's what we're doing with North Korea, the crap we've done with China. Guys in Washington are a bunch of pussies. There is also great concern that Israel is planning to strike Iran before the U.S. presidential election in November in order to force President Barack Obama to militarily support the effort. Obama would likely lose a lot of votes among the pro-Israel American public if he did not help. And Jerusalem is worried that if it waits until after the election, Obama wins, God forbid, he will be less inclined to provide assistance. Because you've seen how he's snubbing Netanyahu now. How do you think he's going to treat him after he's elected? He ain't going to give a shit. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said last week, "The world tells Israel, wait, there's still time." And I say, wait for what? Wait until when? Those in the international community who refuse to put red lines before Iran don't have a moral right to place a red light before Israel. And you know, he's got a point. I tend to agree with that. I hate the direction that they're going, but he's right. You know, you're going to tell Israel to stop, but you're not going to tell Iran to stop? That's a double standard. Netanyahu reiterated the urgency of the situation in a series of interviews with the American press this past weekend. Asked on Meet the Press on NBC about the possibility of implementing a containment strategy as was done with the Soviet Union after it went nuclear, Netanyahu said the West was underestimating the fanaticism that rules Iran. Key word there is fanaticism. All right. Quote, I think Iran is very different. They put their zealotry above survival. I wouldn't rely on their rationality, said the Israeli leader. It's the same fanaticism that you see storming your embassies today, and that's a good point. You want these fanatics to have nuclear weapons? I don't. That's me. I don't. Do you? I don't think so. And to make matters worse, right now we've got Ahmadinejad up in New York on the television tour. I guess he was on CNN last night, spouting his hateful rhetoric again, and now he's trying to, if you notice, if you watch any of that, he's trying to come off as, well, I'm the good guy, I'm the great world leader, and I'm looking for peace, and why is everybody picking on me, and we're a historical country, and we're not doing anything wrong, and you know, I expected him to announce that he was going to be on the upcoming season of Dancing with the Stars, for crying out loud. I mean, he's making social commentary about all these other topics. Get real. That son of a bitch should be booted out of the country immediately. Get the damn United Nations out of this country. That's the worst thing we ever did, was allow those bunch of freaks and geeks to come in here like that. You know, they don't like us. Why do we allow that to happen? It just baffles me. Anyway, you don't hear a lot about this on the mainstream media. Again, I appreciate those out there on YouTube, like I said, David and Linda, that have brought this to my attention, because this has really got me really paying attention. This shit's serious. These guys are not joking around. If you go back and you read some of what Ahmadinejad has said in the past, this guy, he's not playing with a full deck, and he's definitely not playing around. Israel has a proven track record. They may be a small nation, but they will not be pushed around. So that makes it even more serious. Now, of course, you can go back and forth and you can debate, well, what's the validity of supporting the Jewish state, and you can talk about the Zionists, and you can go on and on and on and on. Well, that's not what I'm talking about. At risk here is global nuclear war. Because it's not just going to stop with Israel lobbing an EMP toward Iran. And, you know, Iran had exercises, what was it, last week, 2 weeks ago, missile exercises where they're launching short-range missiles, not at intended targets in Tel Aviv, but targets designed like the U.S. bases in Afghanistan and in Bahrain. They have said if Israel strikes Iran, Iran will strike U.S. interest in the area. So keep that in mind when you think it's just between Iran and Israel, because in reality it's not. Serious business. Want to hear your thoughts. Let me know. Sorry about the rant, but this really got me going. Just one other note. Been adding to my long-term food storage. Found a really good sale over at safecastle.com. Check it out. Got some really good prices right now. At least they did yesterday when I placed my order. So go check it out if you want to increase your long-term food storage supplies. Safecastle.com. Got a good sale going on right now. Anyway, thanks guys. Just my thoughts. Hill Country Husker.